It could have backfired completely and we could have not existed 6 months later. That model might have failed, but it worked. We didn't, and I still don't believe in this idea that you can work your way up. Like, we wanted to do the top stuff. So the theory was we wait until ManVsMachine gets an opportunity that is a top level, high concept opportunity. We do that job, and that's how we'll establish ourselves. No one will ever know us for doing any low end or mid range work.
Welcome. This is Unfolding, the show where I unfold creative business minds. My name is Marko Pfann, and now I just want you to sit back and enjoy the show. So, today we are talking to Mike Alderson, the co-founder of one of the most influential studios in the creative motion design scene, I would say. Yeah, welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
How's it going?
All is good, thanks. It's quite early over here in LA, but I'm awake now.
So a few things that I want to talk to you about, but the most important thing is ManVsMachine has been around for almost the beginning of motion design scene, and you had a quite stellar growth. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, how did that all happen? And because, as I remember, you grew super, not necessarily big, but became famous really fast.
Yeah, and that was the plan, to be honest. That was the dream, the intention. So we're approaching 18 years old now as a company. So we've almost got an adult on our hands, and we aim to get there quickly because, to be perfectly honest, so jumping all the way back, 2000, end of 2006, start 2007, myself and Tim Swift established ManVsMachine. Just the two of us. We were both designers / creative directors with enough hands-on skills, but not great. But our objective was to combine the ideas and the execution and put them on the same level of importance. And it probably doesn't ring true as much nowadays, but back then we had the creative shops who were doing all this really interesting sort of conceptual stuff. Execution wasn't necessarily there with the sort of polish. And then you had the more traditional post-production companies who were doing excellent finish. It was more traditional visual effects and things like that. So we just wanted to match the two, put them in the same room together. So if we get the best thinkers and the best makers in the same room sat next to each other, then theoretically that's a business. So that's what it was. Yeah. But we did, to your point about making a name for ourselves fairly quickly, we had a start. Tim had a really successful studio before that was called Precursor. And I was head of design at a company called MainFrame, who was still going strong. Amazing company. So we were a startup, but we had momentum personally each as well. So we got moving, and we just decided to not start at the bottom. We didn't, and I still don't believe in the fact that this idea that you can work your way up. Like, we wanted to do the top stuff. We'd already been doing top stuff in our previous sort of roles, but there was no point going backwards. So the theory was we wait until ManVsMachine gets an opportunity that is a top level, high concept opportunity. And then we pitch on that, or we do that job. And that's how we'll establish ourselves. No one will ever know us for doing any low end or mid range work. And that was a business strategy decision, because we don't think it's a thing where, you start off doing little bits and bobs and people are like, let's give that person a chance. The reality of business is you get pigeonholed really quickly as an artist or as a company. And we were aware of that, so we decided to try and take the shortcut. It could have backfired completely, and we could have not existed 6 months later because that model might have failed, but it worked. I think the first thing we ever pitched on was like an E4 rebrand, one of Channel 4's channels, and we got moving into that TV branding world pretty quickly. So, yeah, that's how it all started out, with the intention of establishing ourselves in that sort of top 5% pretty quickly.
It's a bold decision to make, a bold strategy to execute, actually.
I know, and sometimes it probably sounds a little bit arrogant when I say it, but that was our plan. That's what we decided to do. And like I say, it was probably 50-50 whether it worked or not, but we made it work.
50-50. The odds, if you try to work if you want to work your way up, the odds are not better. They're actually worse than 50%. So that's actually pretty good. But what gave you the courage? Because one of the things I teach people is actually to do exactly that. Don't waste your time on small projects and then projects you don't want to put on your portfolio. But what gave you the courage that you actually want to proceed and actually go? And another question, how did you get to those? How did you get access as a new studio?
That was the luxury we had, is we had relationships from previous roles, Tim's previous studio, who were doing all the super cool MTV rebrand, like channel network brands and stuff.
Yeah.
So we had access to the names who were heading up the marketing department at Channel 4, MTV,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. We got ourselves a rep straight away in a production company in the commercials world. So we were straight into that, pitching on commercials as well. So we had the network to start. We weren't just out of college. I was a bit younger, but Tim we were both in our 20s. Tim was late 20s. I was mid 20s when we started. But we're both, yeah, I think the reason we made it didn't feel that bold to us. It just felt like a good idea, because we sat down in a pub in London before we started the company, almost on a whim one day, with this mutual vision that basically good design is good business, and we wanted both. And this is the whole obsession I've got, is like everything has to be both. We talk in dichotomies so much, especially like in the creative industry. Is it a money job or is it a creative job? Is it trendy or is it timeless? And it's just this. There's so many of them, and our opinion is that you need both all the time of all these things. So we wanted to do the best work, but because we knew that the best work would make us the most money, basically. Yeah. And it was as simple as that. We've never ever had that mindset that to be creatively fulfilled, you have to do your stuff on the side that satisfies you. We were on a mission I personally get much more of a kick out of making an uncool mainstream brand present well than making a Nike present well, right, or a brand that's already considered cool. So that, I think we were on a mission from the start to try and get the most mainstream work we could and make it cool. Be the cool company in the mainstream world is another way of describing what the business model was.
Was that something your clients back then bought into, like the idea? Because it also required them to get out of their comfort zone, right? How did you
to a degree, yeah. But we always put the client first, as in it was never a case of we're artists and if the client wants to come along with our vision, then so be it. It was always like, what do you need? What are the pillars of your brief? And let's hit those key pillars straight off. And we worked out pretty quickly. And all this is still true to this day, literally 18 years later. The best way to be selfish is to like tick the client's boxes first, get them on board. So by the third meeting of the project, they see that you're prioritizing their stuff and you get it, and you're serving the client, you're serving the work, and they relax, and they start to know that they're getting what they need from it. Their boss is getting what they need from it, which is the actual truth of all this stuff. No matter, you can boil this whole thing down to we're all just trying to impress somebody else's boss. And if you can find out who that boss is and even get access to them, then the whole thing becomes so much easier, because it removes another level of like guesswork. But yeah, we just prioritize the client's needs first, because that's obviously what you're being paid for. But it gets them on side, and suddenly you free up this space in the timeline. If you're doing a spot, let's say, where there's these spaces to be selfish because you've hit these pillars, and then you start suggesting really interesting ways of gluing the whole piece together, because they're ticking their boxes.
So basically you gave them what they wanted in the beginning, and then you had the freedom, you had the trust and the freedom to actually explore and go bigger.
Exactly. Yeah. It's okay to be selfish doing what we do, and you should be, but you've got to, if you're selfish off the bat and you disregard their needs, then obviously you're not going to have a good relationship with that client. If you prioritize them, then suddenly these spaces open up where you're like, yeah, let's be selfish. And internally, we're very R&D driven. So we end up with loads of stuff. It's designed by doing more than designed by talking is how we work. So we'll have internally 3-4 different possible ways of what is the sort of like visual glue that knits all this together. And it becomes a fun sort of internal process. And yeah, the clients are much more relaxed because they're like, I think we've got what we need. And if you can get to that point halfway through the project where you just see them relaxing and giving you more time, every call with the client and check-in doesn't start with, what's happened since last week? It's more, there's one pillar that needed improving. So I think some clients will tell you what those pillars are. I refer to them as pillars, but like the most important pieces of communication for them in that particular spot or campaign.
Okay, got it.
But sometimes you've got to pull them out yourselves, and that means asking a lot of questions to the client. but you've got to establish what they are. What is important to this client? Sometimes it's one big thing, sometimes there's six, and then you work out what your strategy for that project is around the client's needs.
So I love that, because a lot of people don't do that. Like, you call them pillars, but the core messages of a product, even, and as you said, the client oftentimes doesn't know what the core messages they want or should put out there. Let me ask you this. You said, like, your core fundamental work is based on R&D. So you have a lot of ideas, and things like that. But how much do you truly present to the client? How much do you hold back? And do you really present 2, 3, 4, 5 concepts, or you dial it down?
No. So there's definitely, depends on the client. As in, if it's a pitch, we don't present loads of concepts. If it's a first-time client and it's a pitch, we think it's important to show decisiveness. I don't know if that's a word. To be decisive.
I don't know.
Yeah, my English isn't great either. To be decisive, because they're paying you to be their creative partner. And I think if you go in with 7 ideas with a first-time client and be like, yeah, just feel free to choose one or maybe mix 2, then you can do that. You might increase your chances of winning the pitch, but you're not going to have the relationship that we want with the client, where it's a conversation where you both listen to each other. So, yeah, for a first-time client, we'd sometimes present up to 3, sometimes, most often 2, I'd say. And sometimes if you're doing 3, the third one is just the crazy one to show that you have got that creative power to go there, even though you know that they can't and they won't.
Yeah.
It's fun to think about. And it just shows them that, oh man, these guys don't just make slick, cool visual effects. They're ideas people. So sometimes it just serves that purpose. And we're like, it's almost to make the more kind of palatable route look even more palatable, because it's, you could do this. So there's a bit of strategy there. But then if it's a repeat client and we're just jumping into a project with no pitch, it's extremely open.
So I like that you're actually using a decoy. So have a high bar, and then
you never know, they might go for it. But it is obviously like it's this. If it was up to us, this is what we do. Yeah. But we know that you guys have like an established visual language, and this is the one that fits. This is the one that pushes it a little bit, and this is the one that completely breaks it. But it will be fun. But it creates a good relationship and a good conversation with the client, because they're like, yeah, cool, but let's talk about the other one.
At least your creatives have fun, right? Your team has fun.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, how far can you push it?
Tell me a little bit about the difference in relationship between, I would call them the big business clients that you have, and what everyone else is going after. Is there a difference in the relationship?
I don't think so. We don't have any sort of retainers or anything like that. Everything's always just been project to project ever since we started, and we like it that way. You know, makes you hungry. You'd like to think relationships with like big clients tend to typically run. Some have run for 7 years, like we had an epic run with Nike. Some can typically, I think they're a 2-3 year cycle before you get a little bit. You both need a bit of a refresh. And there's a lot of competition out there now in what we do, so there's plenty of choice. I don't think there's a big difference. It's the same sorts of people who you sit in a meeting room with or on a Zoom call with in these organizations. But with clients like the BBC, for example, we rebranded BBC One a couple of years ago, which was a big bucket list one for me because I'm a British kid, and that's like the flagship television channel in broadcasting, full stop, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, a client like that is like it's a public service. So obviously you can't approach that client relationship or the communications for how to move that project forward the same as you would with someone who's head of basketball at Nike, who's basically a friend at that point because you've worked together so much. You've got to put your kind of serious foot forward sometimes, but being stupid is important too. That's my favorite dichotomy of them all, is that I think you have to be like serious and stupid constantly in our line of work. I think they're both like vital skills, because we're being paid to be stupid. We're being paid to come up with visions and ideas that people who aren't from our world can't come up with. So there's like a responsibility to come into work every day with a stupid air in your head. What kind of shit can we do today? What kind of shit can we come up with?
The things no one else trusts they can do, or
be stupid. But then obviously how you package those stupid ideas becomes quite a serious business. So it's always both. It's this thing, and when I do the talks, like that's my favorite slide in the whole deck is serious versus stupid that I have, because I think it encompasses everything we do in our day to day. It's every micro decision is like, which side of serious and stupid do we want to fall on here? And big like business decisions. We talked about our business model, which is still the same, but there was definitely a level of stupidity, borderline arrogance about that. But we were serious about how confident and arrogant and stupid we were, and it somehow worked out. So,
but you didn't stop there, right? You made more ballsy decisions. One that maybe you want to share some. One
more
I know of
decisions?
is sorry.
We've been the same ever since, but the biggest change that's happened in the last 18 years is when we were acquired by WPP in when was that? That was probably 9 years ago now. That was 2016 when the deal was announced. Yeah, so we were acquired by WPP and we were part of the Landor group, and Landor are a huge brand consultancy. And I wouldn't say that was a ballsy move, but it was a business decision that we were going really well. The growth curve of the company was extremely consistent and healthy, and we were still small. I think we were, would be 12 people when we were acquired, but we were always punching above our weight. That was our thing, be the kind of underdog in every situation. And we decided that it was probably time to, Tim and I were doing everything. We didn't even have producers for the first 6 years. Or, it was stupid. It led to some sort of health issues for me particularly, but we could talk about that if you want to. But we were pushing it too far with what we could do with 2 people and a bunch of artists. So it was Tim who said to me, would you be interested in having conversations with people about us becoming part of a bigger sort of system or network? I'm like, absolutely. It was Tim, because Tim had a studio before. He was always more pragmatic about the business, and I was a lot more emotional about it because it was my first baby kind of thing, and I was 5 years younger. But we ended up fairly quickly being introduced to somebody at Landor, who are still like one of the biggest brand agencies in the world. And we had a conversation, and that 18 months after that first conversation, everything was done, dusted, and we were part of the Landor group. We still are to this day. But what's interesting about it is we're so different. And that, like Landor, less so now, they've hugely contemporized and modernized themselves, but 9 years ago, they were one of the most traditional brand agencies. Huge, like very strategy driven, still are, but they were one of the kind of stalwarts of the industry. And we were obviously this kind of upstart, cocky, young, cool thing, like intentionally cool. So on paper, you wouldn't put us two together because it's not like what you'd call a natural marriage kind of thing. I guess another analogy is like, I guess if you'd have asked me back then, who do you think you'd be best suited to, if you had to partner with a bigger company tomorrow, who would you be suited to join? And I guess I would have said like a Wolf Ollins or something in that brand world. Because even though we're very sort of motion design, we think of ourselves as a brand-centric agency. We stay as close to brand as possible no matter what we're doing. I would have said a Wolf Ollins because they were like, they did more risky stuff. But the truth is, I think if we'd have ended up in that relationship, it would have been nowhere near as fruitful or successful as what we have with Landor, because we'd be too similar. What's interesting with us and Landor still is that there's just a line in the sand of where our expertise start and end. They are this design and strategy-driven global entity with loads of offices all over the world. We're a 2-office super boutique still. But by having that relationship, when it is time to cross over, we know when that is. It's not a constant like blurry line of how do we work together. It's, for example, we're going into a meeting in 2 weeks here in LA for a branding brief that a company our size, ManVsMachine size, should be nowhere near.
Okay.
But because I think one of the benefits is that company asked us to bring a strategist along from our partner company. So that's what we're doing. We're going in together to this huge sort of briefing meeting. And that's the beauty of it, is we can act really serious and really grown up when we need to. But that might be our Tuesday, rocking up with Landor to this enormous global rebrand briefing. And then our Wednesday might be just goofing around, being cool again, just trying to make the coolest little thing for a cool little company again. And that's the fun of it, is we've got that. The range is wild. And also it's been a success, the acquisition, because you hear a lot of bad stories about these things. People complaining, oh, the founder left after 2 minutes, it ruined the company. It's not ruined us. We've still got the independent spirit we've got. I think we're still as influential as we always were. And all our staff have all the benefits, all the healthcare, which they never had before. So we're a proper company with still the spirit we had originally. So I'm really proud of it.
And that's something you should be proud of. You have built something very special. But it sounds like you are better off now after the acquisition than before, because you mentioned you had like mental health issues. You want to talk about this real quick? What happened?
I'm pretty sure it was as a result of being a control freak, burning the candle at both ends, all that kind of stuff. I went downhill. That was before the acquisition. That was 2013. Yeah, 6 years of grind. And it's the grind. And obviously you never switch off when it's your own business. That's a thing. It didn't help that me and my wife were flipping flats on the side at the weekend at home. But yeah, I just bore myself out. I burnt out completely. The biggest mistake I made was ignoring it for a year, pretending I was fine, even in front of Tim, my partner, in front of my wife. I pretended I was okay, but I was declining internally and couldn't work out. I was ignorant enough to refuse to accept that it was a mental illness. So it could be stress or anxiety driven. I was convinced it must be some kind of sickness. I was going to the doctor saying, I'm sick. And only when I'd been tested for every possible physical illness would I accept that it was a burnout, it was a mental health issue. And I got so bad, and it was self-inflicted because I ignored it. I honestly think if I'd addressed it 3 months into feeling these symptoms of I was dizzy, weak, tired, if I'd have addressed it earlier, I think I could have been back on track a lot quicker than I was. But I ended up being dumb and hiding it, and then having to go into the office one day and saying to Tim, I've got to go away until I can come back. And he was mega supportive and said, you're not very much used to me as you are anyway. Yeah, I don't think I was doing a great job of hiding it. But yeah, that was the deal. And I think I went away and I was off work for 9 months. Completely
9 months.
off work for 9 months. Yeah, I was bad. I was really bad. So it was a very unpleasant period. But I think most people go through some version of that, especially in my position. If you own a company, you're bound to go through some version of that. Probably not. Most people aren't as stupid as me where they let it get so bad, but I learned a lot from that. And I still have to manage that every day to this point.
But how did you get back on track?
I had to learn to relax, learn to switch off, completely disconnect. Because I did meditation. I tried all sorts, spoke to a lot of people. Interestingly, when that happened, Tim's first question was like, what do you want me to tell the clients, the staff, our friends? I was like, tell them the truth. Right. Tell them I'm not well. Tell them I've burnt out and I need to rest. And the reason I hid it in the first place because I thought I was like so vital to the company. I was the kind of creative director, and I thought not everything had to be under my control. And I took that too far for sure. But I got back on track by having a very caring family who looked after me and going back to baby steps and starting from the start. I got so bad, like eating a meal was hard for me. I was really bad. Yeah, energy levels were like zero. I was afraid to leave the house and stuff like that. So I went pretty far down. But yeah, I had to just build back up again and learn to relax and build healthier habits and it was just my brain and body telling me you can't go like this forever. You don't have that capacity. So I had to set my new limits and build from there. And I didn't think I was going to get back at one point, but I did.
So what's the difference now when we talk about work and how you approach work? What's the difference now to when you burned out?
I know my limitations now of how much I can handle. But the cool thing about it was the silver lining out of that was I got back to the studio 9 months later. And when I came back 9 months later, I was slowly reintegrating myself, like doing being involved in one project at a time and then building up to two again. But the cool thing was I went away and realized that I wasn't vital to the company because the company was still thriving, still growing. Without me there, the momentum continued. And so that was amazing. And obviously that's what I needed to see because I guess I was too caught up in my own control-y freakness to think that was possible. So that was awesome to see that everybody else is just, we're good without you, mate. Don't worry about it.
I think this is everyone else anyone else, it would have freaked out anyone else. Coming back and realizing I'm not vital to this company. What did that do to your ego?
No, I was happy to be back. I was still questioning whether I could do the work. Like I had the capacity. So no, that was awesome, because that's when you realize that this thing that we built isn't just me and Tim and a few other people. It was this genuine unit of people who were pushing this thing forward. And we were super small then, like 8, 9 people, maybe 10. That was a couple of years before we went into the sort of the acquisition talks. But yeah, the company didn't miss a beat. And obviously a lot of that's Tim keeping the ship on course. But the people who are still there to this day, who were the good friends like Adam Rowe, who is the CEO of the whole company now. Tim and I have stepped away from those like day-to-day leadership roles, and we're in these kind of just global oversight positions now. And Adam, who was a senior designer way back then, this January he was officially like given the job of CEO of the whole organization. Nice. So we were a unit, and we've grown as a unit, and we're 58 people now across the 2 offices. But that seems big, but we still act exactly the same way as we used to. It's just we still feel like the underdog in every situation, and I think that's an important spirit to keep. But yeah, it was going back, and there was no ego. The ego was there before, but when I got back, the ego was gone. I was just thankful that this thing was. I was in awe and of how well it was going without me. And it just goes to show that no matter how important any of us think we are as individuals, the collective is so much more important.
I like this idea, having a collective that backs you up, and then actually that's a relief. Yeah, that's true.
Vital.
So what is the future of ManVsMachine in this new ever-changing landscape, but especially changing now?
Yeah, nothing changes on our strategy meetings once a year. Big strategy meeting where we'll do a sort of ManVsMachine internal one, and then we'll do a joint one with Landor, and we say the same things every year. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing. There might be some specific conversations about, it might be interesting to try and get a foot in that sector of the industry. Which clients have you never worked with, you want to work with? We put that out to the whole company every year. Has anybody got any dream clients they want to work with, big or small? We build a little like hit list and see how we can go with tapping those brands and clients. But honestly, every year it's the same thing. Just keep doing what we're doing. It doesn't matter what the technology is or the latest technological developments are. Excuse me. It's our job to harness them and meld them with ideas. So that is just the status every year. We were one of the first studios to embrace Cinema 4D back in the day and just go all in on Cinema 4D. And we just decided to do it. It's like, if that's going to be our lead software, then we've got to be the best in the world at using it. So let's do that. And so that was the clear operation then. And then now we use a lot of Houdini, and now obviously AI is a thing. It's another tool that we have to harness better than anybody else, or as well as everybody else. So nothing really changes. And in our sort of approach to the year, January 1st, let's do it again. Every Monday, let's do it again. We're interested in new technologies, but the thing we're old school is that we don't get distracted by new technologies. We consider ourselves designers first, and everything else is a tool to help us fulfill a vision. But with the likes of new medias, whether it's AR, VR, NFTs, we don't mess around with that stuff. We just stay super close to top level brand communications, because that's where we believe there's consistency in the business. We don't want to overinvest in some 3-4 person team who's going to go away and do some Apple Vision Pro specialist stuff. That's not us. We stay super consistent and old fashioned, where we're brand communication, visual communication company. So let's just stay as close to those top level communications as possible, and not let the other companies do the stuff that's trying to lean into these technologies heavier. We just use the technology when it feels like it's given to us as a relevant tool.
I like that, because it's also business strategy, right? Don't
just
business. Run after.
Yeah, this ideal of like good work is good business is that was day one, and it's day whatever 10,000.
How important? I have another question for you. How important is it to be one of the best in the niche you are, or at what you do, basically? How important is that to your business?
I think it's important. Yeah, it's important to us because that's our business model to be one of the best options because we're at a higher price point than probably a lot of other studios, and that was again part of the business strategy. Is we don't want to do high volume of work. We want to do a healthy volume of work and charge a little bit more for it. So if our product is 5% superior to the next best option, that's what we're intending to do. It's that simple. They're all business decisions. These aren't just sort of wafty creative ideas. They're all business decisions. We want to stay ahead or stay in that top 5%. And I don't know I guess different people are motivated by different things, but we're quite insular where we keep our eyes on ourselves rather than the competition. But we know when we're doing something good. We know when it's good, and when there's an opportunity to do something really good and win some awards, it's pretty clear. So it's about like really maximizing those opportunities. But I'd say rather than it being important, I'd say being in that top 5%, let's call it, that's what I'm genuinely most proud of what we've achieved with ManVsMachine, is that we've been there since we entered that top 5% shortly after we started. We've been there ever since. We've never dropped out of it, in my opinion. Other people might have a different opinion, but I don't think we have. And that's consistency is weirdly the thing I'm most proud of. And if you'd have asked me this when I was 25, starting the company, what do you think the thing you'll say you're most proud of 18 years from now? I would definitely not have said how consistent we've been.
Yeah, boring.
It sounds boring, but it's the key. It's like constantly finding the balance in all these things to maintain that consistency. There's all the sports team analogies, which are all like relevant, but to stay near the top is exhausting and really hard. And if you're good at it, it looks like it's easy, but it's not. It takes a lot of work, a lot of people move through the company during this 18-year process. And it's awesome that through big changes like acquisitions and my illnesses and cycling staff through opening an LA office, we've managed to, from the outside looking in, we've never changed. And that's awesome that we've managed to achieve that.
So you have a very great, amazing business mindset. Where did you get it? Like for creative, and I work with a lot of creative studio owners, like that's unusual, very unusual. So where did you get that mindset?
Tim is the business mind. We were both designer, creative director guys, but he was definitely the business mind. Tim was the kid who used to sell zip discs out of his locker for 50 pence profit per zip disc. He'd buy them in bulk. He was that kid. I was never that kid. But I think there's a confidence there in that we like keeping it simple. So to us, if there's clarity, then everyone in the company knows where they're headed. And that the easiest way to create clarity is through confidence. Backing up what you've said you're going to do is the hard part. But I think with the lucky thing that happened to me was that I never had a traditional lead into the creative industry. I left school at 16, never did any design in school. I did art. I was always like, one of the best drawers in my grade at school and stuff. But when I was 16, I left and went and did a mechanical engineering apprenticeship in a glass factory in my hometown, St. Helens. I did that for 2 years, learning to weld. We literally built our own tool sets and stuff. And I was working in a factory, like repairing the machinery in the factory. So basically from that, I learned exactly what I did not want to do for the rest of my life. I did it because it was what you do. It was like £60 a week. It was some money. I could get a crappy car and stuff. But after 2 years of that, I knew what I didn't want to do. And then at the same time, I was racing mountain bikes to a pretty high level. So I took a year off and did that as much as I could for a year and maxed out my ability in that. And then basically my best friend's older brother was doing a degree in graphic design at Manchester University. And I saw what he was doing and was asking him questions like, what is this? Can you tell me about what the kind of projects you get given? And it just sounded like my dream, these graphic design briefs. So I was like, cool, I want to do that. So I actually cheated and paid him to take his art foundation portfolio. And I took it to they were called HND courses. They're called foundation degrees now. So I didn't want to play catch up and have to go all the way back and do A level. I couldn't do that. I'd lost 3 years. So I opportunist lagged my way to
I love that.
To catch up with. And I think that the tutors on the course that I joined, it was like HND graphic design. I think they knew that I was a chancer, but they thought, we'll give him a chance. And I was the most enthusiastic person on that course every day, because I hadn't just been going through the motions, left school, done A-level arts, then gone on to do graphic design. I'd been where I didn't want to be and back again. So I was super enthusiastic. And then after a year of that, I decided I was ready to move to London, and I blagged my way into the second year of a degree there. So I think I've always had this opportunistic thing, a momentum that I started quite early from that sort of let's play catch up. And I think that's essentially, to answer your original question, that's where this business mindset comes from is, let's just take the most efficient route to getting where we need to get and make it happen.
A lot of people wouldn't even have thought about those opportunities. And I love that you actually not only thought about it, but actually you executed them.
Yeah, that's the joys of growing up in a good old working class town where, everyone does what they can do to get ahead. Do whatever you need to do.
That's where I grew up too. I get that.
Cool.
Mike, I want to be respectful of your time. We are already over time. That was an amazing interview. Thanks for your time. And I hope we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thanks. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Marko Pfann, and I hope to see you all again on our next show where we unfold creative business minds.